Welcome back to Robyn's Academy. Last week we looked at making sure that we understand the choices that we can make in our environment before we even pick up our camera, and how we can choose which angles, which lighting, and how we can control those things. That's really, really important. But next we're going to do what are the creative choices that we can make in camera. So this is stage 2. Don't worry, we'll be doing stage 3 next week. Understanding our camera settings and knowing how to get the most out of it so we can make intentional creative choices. Hopefully you already know things like your aperture, shutter speeds, ISO. You understand what these are. If you don't, you need to go back to basics and then come back here after to be able to transform your photography. So we're going to be using the same exercise as last time and just simply adding into this dynamic of how we can change things in our settings to get different results. First off, let's start with your aperture and your depth of field and how much of your image is in focus. We want to be able to know exactly how many things we want in focus and therefore how much depth of field do we need. That is normally dictated then by where we choose to focus and what is our aperture to be able to do these things. Always match your aperture to the story you're trying to tell. This will allow you to choose whether you're looking to add some dimension to your shot or whether you're looking to focus and pinpoint that particular thing. So many people believe that we should always use the lowest possible aperture, 1.8, 2.8, but I will say it's one of the things that you need to bear in mind that most people, when they get blurry, it's simply because they focused on the wrong point, and because they have such a shallow depth of field, parts of it become blurred. We are 3D. Images are flat. Therefore, if I put my focus point here and my depth of field is really, really low, my eye won't be in focus, or something here won't be in focus. So now remember, if you're unlucky enough not to have something that goes down to a 2.8, adding that little bit of distance between your subject and the background will help intensify that dreaminess. And if you're looking to bring the background into focus to enable it to add to that story, so we're going to be looking at making sure that we've got an aperture of around 11 f16 kind of bit. With a small aperture, we are going to have the scene in focus, and it will enable you to have more details and become sharper, enabling them to that story. Next up, let's talk about those focus styles and the focus points. As you to control exactly where you want to focus. In this shot, I'm obviously placing it at the top of the handle. And then I'm going to shift the focus down to the bottom of the rim, and you can see the differences about where those blur in. So your focus point and your depth of field will bring a dynamic shift on where you are focusing and enable you to concentrate and focus the viewer there. So by choosing where to focus, you can guide the viewer's eye to the most important part of the image. This is especially important when we talk about things like product photography and selling out features. Now, while autofocus is helpful, it doesn't always hit the mark, especially if you're doing things like a long exposure, because it will try and shift sometimes, and as it tries to shift, you've obviously got a mixed match of what's going on. So I would always say lock onto the background instead of your subject if you're doing a large depth of field, and practice using your manual focus and selecting different focal points to ensure that it stays sharp. Practicing manual focus is something we don't do, and we should. One of the big things I would say for you to try today is literally just try a manual focus, and then try doing a spot focus and get rid of the zones. And if you really want to get clever and you want to push yourself to the next degree, maybe try bat focusing, because that enables you to focus differently to where you shoot. Play around with your shutter speed and your ISO. The higher the shutter speed is, the more light and captures motion. Now, one of the biggest things I see from beginners is that they assume that if they lower that shutter speed, they've got more light and therefore they'll have a better exposure. The problem is, if your shutter is too low and you've got motion blur, no matter how good the autofocus is, if it's moving in the shot, then you've got no hope. So being able to balance your shutter speed with the lighting conditions is really, really important. Just remember that if you are shooting in a low situation and you need to keep that shutter speed high, don't be worried about playing with that ISO. Just make sure that you put your limit in so that you're not getting bogged down by grain. So as you can see, by changing these small changes in your settings can make a big difference in how your shots turn out. mastering different combinations and knowing which ones work well together will enable you to gain control over the images that you produce. Photography isn't just about snapping an image. I know that we have a terrible thing of everybody's got a phone. We can all go out and just take a shot and it's easy. There's more to it than that. You need to be able to play with these different things and bring them all together, and being able to learn why something works and why something doesn't work, that will enable you to kind of grow as a photographer. So your challenge for today is to get up close and personal with your camera settings and making sure that not only do you understand them, but you have agreed with your camera the best ones for you. Just see how it impacts the shot. As always, if you liked this and it helped you in any way, shape, or form, please hit that like button. It really does help me out. And next time we'll be talking about what happens after you've taken the shot and how the process is not over. Just because you've taken the shot doesn't mean we're finished. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy clicking.